If you're an angler and you want to pass your love of fishing on to your grandchildren's grandchildren, then it would be wise to catch and release. Likewise, I would like to argue that if you want to pass your love of Christ onto your family, it's not just wise to catch and release. You have no other choice but to catch and release. And just to make sure that I communicated the imperative nature of this in 2 short sentences, we went from an angler passing on to generations that she will likely never even meet, to a lover of Christ passing on to just their family. That is, the stakes are high. Let us, lovers of Christ, better understand how imperative is that we're more like sorry, really sorry, more like volunteer firefighters, and more like first century fishermen than the average Christian in 2021. I Googled and found the sign outside of a local fire department in Pennsylvania that Lori Wagner writes about. It's advertising for volunteer firefighters and reads, "Members wanted, cool hat, sweet ride, no pay and odd hours." While the sign concedes the volunteer nature of the job and its unpredictability, it also tries to humorously play up the cool aspects of being a firefighter. Who wouldn't love the idea of riding along in a fire engine or ringing that bell or honking that horn? But to be a firefighter, it's much, much, much more than that. Actual members of volunteer fire stations typically love their work. When I asked one of my best friends, Jim Thomas, why he had been a volunteer firefighter for 24 years, he said, "It gets in your blood." It not only gives them a purpose, it allows them to exhibit goodwill towards others, and it makes them feel as if they're making a meaningful difference in their communities, and that they're a part of a tight-knit communal group. They support each other. They uplift each other. The station provides a place for them to gather, to communicate, and to build lasting, meaningful relationships. Of course, not mentioned in the ad are the more dangerous aspects of the job, actually fighting fires. But for firefighters, the pros far outweigh the cons, the risks. A similar sign could have been posted in Jesus' time for the job of fishermen. Perhaps something like this: fresh, salt air, strenuous labor, long hours, tedious work, minimal results. While the life of a fisherman might have included spectacular sunsets and awe-inspiring sunrises, some great camaraderie, and maybe even a free fish dinner once a week, it was also an extremely tough job that required infinite patience, a strong body and mind, and maximum endurance. The kind of net fishing that Jesus' disciples practiced required a particularly strong, muscular physique. The intensity of hauling in the nets, they were out over the water. They were filled often with very heavy fish of all sizes and shapes and other sea creatures, was a brutal way to make a daily living. It would put any workout out there in workout land to shame. Not only that, but the linen nets were always tearing. So mending and sewing the nets was a daily chore that had to be completed expertly and efficiently. Typically, nets would be cast in the evening hours of dusk, and in the morning, mending the nets would commence. If they were regimented and dedicated to their work, their persistence would eventually pay off. We do know that the Zebedee family fishing business did quite well, for example, because when James and John left to follow Jesus, they left their father in the boat with the hired hands. Those who could afford a boat, let alone an entire crew, ran one of the wealthier, more successful, and dedicated fishing businesses that were exemplified by persistent, loyal, hard-working men and their families. They too, the women too, would have to work hard together. They are part of a good team. In order to fish, mend, sort, clean, and sell their daily catch, it takes a team. It takes a team to run a profitable fishing business in a competitive regional market like the one around the Sea of Galilee. I wonder what Peter and his brother Andrew and their mothers-in-laws and their wives had to say about releasing them to chase a traveling preacher. I wonder how old man Zebedee felt when he released his two sons and they left their nets half mended in the boat. Jesus' call to be fishers of people is not like the bulletin cover. It's not the fairy tale, fantasy view that too much of Christianity has. It's hard work that requires much strength and as much hard work as it does unending endurance. It requires a level of selfless and sacrifice. So much selflessness and so much sacrifice, in fact, that it is countercultural. And yes, Jesus will teach us to fish for people, but in order to catch them, in order to reel them in and bring them in, there is so much that we all, self included, need to release. I think of a man named Hans Luther. He had dreams that his illustrious son's practice of law would be a means of pulling their family up out of their humble origins. Hans probably dreamt about his son standing before kings. And Martin Luther, the reformer, did stand before kings, but it was as an outlaw, or as with having a bounty on his head, not as a champion of the law, but as a champion lover of Christ. Friends, we are today's disciples. We are called to catch people, and it's not easy, because in order to be able to catch even just our own family, we have so much that we need to release, that we need to say sorry, really sorry. I think this paraphrase of a classic question really makes the point. If you were arrested for fishing for your family, would you be convicted? Amen? Amen.